Get that child out of my house. Natalie Voss's voice cracked across the marble foyer so sharply that the florist near the front doors stopped arranging white roses. 3-year-old Lily froze beside the grand staircase, one tiny fist closed around something bright. Outside the tall windows of the Harmon estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, rain ticked against the glass in thin silver lines. Inside, the mansion smelled of polished wood, expensive candles, and the fresh flowers being prepared for Natalie's engagement luncheon. Nearly 40 guests were due within an hour. Board members, charity donors, women Natalie called friends and everyone else called important. But at that moment, nobody was looking at the roses. They were looking at Rosa Morales. Rosa stood near the bottom step in her dark housekeeping uniform, her hands still damp from cleaning the silver trays in the dining room. Her face had gone pale, but she did not move toward her daughter in panic. Not yet. She had learned a long time ago that people like Natalie notice panic. They fed on it. Lily Rosa said softly, though her throat tightened around the word, "Come here, sweetheart." The little girl looked up at her mother with wee, grey-green eyes. Then she opened her hand. A gold button lay in her palm. It was no bigger than a quarter old-fashioned and heavy, with the faint outline of a lion pressed into its center. It had fallen from the cuff of Natalie's cream-colored jacket as she swept down the staircase, talking loudly about guest lists and diamond centerpieces. Lily had simply picked it up and offered it back. "Pretty button," she whispered. Natalie stared at the child as though Lily had tracked mud across a church altar. "You let her touch me," she said. Rosa's jaw tightened. "She found your button, ma'am. She should not be in this part of the house." The words landed harder than the shout. A few of the caterers lowered their eyes. The butler, Mr. Alden, stood frozen near the hallway archway, holding a clipboard against his chest. Even the young florist looked embarrassed. Rosa stepped forward, slow and careful. "I'm sorry. The sitter cancelled this morning. I asked Mrs. Bell if Lily could stay in the staff room until my shift ended. She is not staying in my home," Natalie snapped. The word "my" hung in the room. Not our. Not Ethan's. My. Rosa heard it. So did everyone else. Lily's lower lip began to tremble. She still held out the gold button, her little arm shaking now. Natalie looked down at her with cold disbelief. "Put that down," she said. Lily did not understand. "I said put it down." The child flinched. Rosa crossed the marble floor at once, but Natalie got there first. She bent, snatched the button from Lily's hand and let it fall. It struck the floor with a small, bright sound. Then Natalie nudged it away with the pointed toe of her shoe. The button rolled beneath the staircase. For one breath, the room was silent. Rosa's face changed. Not with anger, with something quieter, something older. She crouched beside Lily and pulled her close, shielding her with both arms. Her daughter buried her face in Rosa's shoulder, her tiny fingers clinging to the worn fabric of Rosa's uniform. "It's all right," Rosa whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong." Natalie laughed once without humor. Actually, she did. She made a scene. Rosa slowly rose. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "She found something that belonged to you. She does not belong here," Natalie said. That was when a man's voice came from the staircase above them. No. Nobody had heard him approach. Ethan Harmon stood halfway down the curved stairs, one hand resting against the carved walnut rail. He had changed out of his business suit after an early flight from Chicago, but he still looked like the man the financial magazines called untouchable. 42 years old, founder of Harmon Meridian, Billionaire, the man whose name was carved into hospital wings and scholarship halls across the state. Yet in that moment, he did not look powerful. He looked stunned. His gaze was fixed on Lily. Not Rosa. Not Natalie. Lily. The little girl peeked out from behind her mother's skirt. Ethan took one step down, then another. Natalie's expression softened instantly, rearranging itself into concern. Ethan, I was just handling a staff issue. He did not answer her. He reached the bottom of the stairs, dropped to one knee on the marble floor, and stretched his hand beneath the railing. When he pulled it back, the gold button rested in his palm. For several seconds, he only looked at it. His thumb passed over the lion crest. Then he looked at Lily again. Rosa felt the blood drain from her face. 4 years earlier, in a tiny apartment across town, she had stared at that same crest on an old navy coat left behind in a chair. She had run her fingers over it while listening to the rain and trying to find the courage to make a phone call that would change everything. She had made that call again and again. No one had ever told Ethan. "Where did you get this button?" Ethan asked, his voice low. Lily sniffed and pointed toward Natalie. Lady dropped it. Natalie gave a nervous little laugh. "It's nothing. It came from one of my jackets." But Ethan did not look at Natalie. He was staring at Lily's eyes. Grey-green, storm-colored, the exact shade that had once looked back at him from an old photograph on his mother's piano. Natalie noticed the shift in his face before anyone else did, and for the first time that morning, she looked afraid. "Ethan," she said carefully, "what is this?" He stood still, holding the button. His eyes moved to Rosa. Rosa could have run then. She had every reason to. She had been dismissed from better jobs for less. She had spent 3 years building a quiet life for Lily, with no child support, no answers, and no room for hope. She knew what happened when a woman like her was accused of reaching for a rich man's life. But Lily's small hand slipped into hers, and Rosa did not run. Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. "Rosa, how old is your daughter?" Natalie's smile disappeared. The guests had not arrived yet. But the house was already full of witnesses. And somewhere beneath the polished surface of the Harmon estate, one forgotten gold button had begun to pull loose every lie Natalie Voss had wrapped around herself. By sunset, the engagement announcement would be cancelled. By Monday morning, Natalie's name would be removed from the Charity Foundation's gala program. And before the week was over, the woman who had screamed at a Maid's toddler would understand that the child she tried to throw out of the mansion was connected to a truth powerful enough to take everything from her. But to understand why that small gold button would destroy everything Natalie had built, we need to go back to the morning Rosa first walked through the service entrance of the Harmon estate. At 5:12 every morning, Rosa Morales woke before the alarm. She did it quietly before the pipes in the old 2-bedroom apartment began to knock, and before the delivery trucks started growling down East Putnam Avenue. The building was 3 blocks from the train tracks, on the side of Greenwich tourists never photographed. Its brick walls held the smell of old radiator, heat bleach, and dinners cooked too close together. Rosa had lived there for 3 years, long enough to know which stairs creaked, long enough to know the landlord would not fix the kitchen window before winter, long enough to understand that when the envelope on the counter said "Final Notice," you opened it only after your child was asleep. That morning the envelope waited beside a chipped yellow mug. Rosa did not touch it yet. Instead, she crossed the narrow hall and stood in Lily's doorway. Her daughter slept curled beneath a faded quilt, one round cheek pressed against a stuffed rabbit missing an ear. Her dark curls were flattened on one side. One small foot had escaped the blanket. Rosa bent and covered it. For a few seconds, she watched Lily breathe. That was the part nobody saw. Not the guests at the Harmon estate. Not the women who glanced at Rosa's uniform. and assumed they knew every important thing about her. Not Natalie Voss, with her soft cashmere voices and sharp eyes. They did not see Rosa counting bus fare in the dark. They did not see her eat toast for dinner so Lily could have strawberries in her lunchbox. They did not see the little girl ask, in the innocent way children asked impossible questions, "Does my dad know what my favorite color is?" Rosa had never lied to Lily, but truth had its own kind of cruelty when it came unfinished. "He may not know yet," she would say, and every time she said it, something inside her hurt. Rosa dressed in the half-light. Black slacks, white blouse, grey cardigan. The same low shoes she had repaired twice with glue from the pharmacy. She tied her hair back, packed Lily's small backpack with crackers, a colouring book, and the rabbit with one ear. Then she finally opened the envelope. The rent was overdue by 12 days. $940. If she did not pay, by Friday, Mr. Keller would begin eviction paperwork. Friday. The same day Natalie Voss was hosting the engagement luncheon at the Harmon estate. The same day Rosa had been asked to work extra hours. The same day the agency that placed domestic workers had warned her not to miss another shift. Rosa folded the letter along its old crease and slipped it into her bag. She had $718 saved. Not enough, but almost. That word had followed her for 4 years. Almost enough money, almost enough courage, almost enough proof, almost enough hope to make one more call. Lily stirred in bed. "Mama, I'm here. Are we going to the big house?" Rosa paused. "Yes, baby." Lily sat up, hugging the rabbit to her chest. "Will the nice old man be there?" Rosa knew she meant Mr. Alden, the Harmon family's longtime butler. He always saved Lily a butter cookie when Rosa had no choice but to bring her by for 10 minutes before the sitter arrived. "Probably," Rosa said. "And the tall man." The room went still. Rosa turned slowly. "What tall man?" "The one in the picture." Lily pointed toward the top shelf of the closet. Rosa's breath caught. Behind a stack of old towels was a small blue tin box. She had hidden it there because she had not known what else to do with it. Inside were the things she could not throw away and could not bear to look at for long. A hospital bracelet, a dried white flower from a rain-soaked night 4 years ago. 3 pages of notes written in her own hand. And 1 photograph. Ethan Harmon stood beside a lake in Massachusetts, younger and smiling in a way the newspapers never captured. He was wearing an old navy coat with gold buttons at the cuff. Rosa stood beside him, hair loose in the wind, laughing at something outside the frame. It had been taken by a stranger on a pier, a stranger who had no idea he was preserving the only proof that their happiness had ever existed. Rosa had not planned to fall in love with Ethan. She had met him in the most ordinary way possible when he came into the small bookstore where she worked evenings near Harvard Square. He had been soaked from the rain and looking for a book his mother used to read. He did not tell her who he was. Not at first. For 6 weeks he had simply been Ethan. A man who remembered how she took her coffee. A man who listened when she talked about books. A man who said he hated being recognized because people looked at his money before they looked at his face. Then one morning, the headlines found him. And after that, everything changed too quickly. A board crisis. A sick mother. Flights. Lawyers. An assistant named Grant Mercer, who seemed to be everywhere, always saying Ethan was unavailable, overwhelmed, unreachable. Then Rosa discovered she was pregnant. She called. She left messages. She mailed a letter to the company office. No answer ever came. By the time Lily was born, Rosa had learned to stop staring at her phone. But she never stopped wondering. "Can I see the picture?" Lily asked. Rosa took down the tin box. For a moment she considered saying no. Then she opened it. Lily studied the photograph with the solemn attention of a child who sensed something important but did not know why. "He has my eyes," she said. Rosa's fingers tightened around the edge of the picture. "No," she whispered. "You have your own eyes." But even as she said it, she knew the truth. Lily's eyes were not exactly Ethan's. They were his mother's. Grey-green, like seawater before a storm. The same eyes Ethan had once said he could never forget. Rosa closed the tin box too quickly. "We need to go." By 6:40 they were on the bus heading toward the estate. The sky over Greenwich was low and silver. Lily pressed her face to the window, leaving a little foggy circle on the glass. Rosa sat beside her with the rent notice in one pocket and the blue tin box in the other. She had packed it that morning without knowing why. Maybe because something in her had grown tired of hiding. Maybe because Friday was coming. Maybe because a woman could only carry the same unanswered question for so many years before it stopped being a wound and became a decision. At the service entrance of the Harmon estate, Rosa checked the clock. 6:58. 2 minutes early. Mr. Alden opened the door before she knocked. He looked at Lily, then at Rosa's tired face. "Mrs. Voss is already here," he said quietly. Rosa felt a small knot form in her stomach. "She's early. She has been here since dawn." His eyes dropped to the bag on Rosa's shoulder. Then almost too softly to hear, he said, "Keep your child close today." Rosa looked past him into the long service hall where the house was waking up around them. Silverware clinked. Floors shone. Flowers arrived by the crate. And somewhere above the marble staircase, Natalie Voss was preparing to become the woman everyone expected Ethan Harmon to marry. Rosa took Lily's hand. Then she walked inside. The Harmon estate had 2 entrances. There was the front entrance where black cars rolled beneath a stone portico and guests stepped onto heated pavement beneath an iron awning. That was where Natalie Voss entered. Then there was the service entrance where delivery men carried crates through the rain, housekeepers signed in beneath a flickering security light, and nobody asked whether you had slept the night before. That was where Rosa belonged. At least that was what Natalie believed. By 8 o'clock, the mansion had divided itself into 2 different worlds. Downstairs, Rosa worked beside Mrs. Bell in the kitchen, slicing lemons for water pitchers and polishing the silver coffee service until she could see her own tired reflection in it. Lily sat at a small table near the pantry with crayons and a colouring book, carefully drawing a house with a red roof and 3 stick figures in front of it. One was Rosa. One was Lily. The third figure was taller than the others. Rosa noticed it but said nothing. Upstairs, Natalie Voss moved from room to room with an event planner at her shoulder, correcting flower arrangements, changing place cards, and speaking with the kind of careful sweetness that sounded polite until you listened long enough. No, Natalie told the florist. The roses should be at eye level. These women have paid too much for their faces to stare at stems. The florist smiled weakly. Natalie turned to her assistant, a thin young woman named Paige, with a tablet clutched against her chest. "And move the staff through the rear hall. I don't want trays crossing the photographs when guests arrive." Paige nodded. "Yes, Miss Voss." Natalie's smile returned. It was flawless. That was the thing people liked about her. At galas and fundraisers, Natalie knew every donor's spouse, every child's school, every cause that made a wealthy person feel generous without requiring them to change anything about themselves. She had built a reputation in Greenwich as Ethan Harmon's elegant future wife, the woman who could organize a charity auction, charm a room full of investors, and make an old mansion look as though it had been designed around her. But people who watched closely noticed something else. Natalie was never cruel when the right people were looking. She was cruel in passing, in lowered voices, in small corrections that gave everyone else permission to look down. At 8:35, Mrs. Bell handed Rosa a tray of folded napkins. "Take these to the blue dining room," she said, "and keep Lily back here." Rosa glanced at her daughter. "Can you stay with Mrs. Bell for 5 minutes?" Lily nodded, serious and proud. "I can colour." Rosa touched her cheek. Then she carried the napkins toward the main corridor. Halfway there, she stopped. Natalie stood beside the grand staircase, speaking to Paige in a tone so quiet it almost disappeared beneath the sound of rain. "I want the Morales woman gone by the end of today." Paige looked startled. "Rosa. She's worked here nearly a year. She brings her child into the house. Only when the sitter falls through. Mr. Alden said I don't care what Mr. Alden said." Natalie's fingers tightened around her phone. She watches everything. She listens. And Ethan has been distracted since he came home. I don't need strangers filling his house with problems. Rosa stood behind the half-open door, the napkins suddenly heavy in her hands. She should have walked away. She should have let the words slide past her like so many others had. But something in Natalie's voice made her stay. Paige lowered her eyes. "Should I call the agency? Not yet. I don't want drama before the luncheon." Natalie looked toward the service hall, though she could not see Rosa there. "Just make sure that little girl is nowhere near the guests." Then she walked away. Rosa remained still for several seconds. Her first instinct was the old one. Protect Lily. Finish the shift. Take whatever dignity remained and leave before anyone could take more. But the eviction notice was in her bag. Friday was 2 days away, and a cancelled shift meant she would not have enough money to keep the apartment. She carried the napkins into the blue dining room anyway. Her hands did not shake until she was alone. Later, Mr. Alden found her in the pantry, standing beside a shelf of crystal glasses. "You heard her," he said. Rosa did not deny it. "She has every right to replace me." "No," Mr. Alden said quietly. "She has influence." "That is not the same thing." Rosa looked at him. Mr. Alden had worked for the Harmon family for 32 years. His hair was silver now, his posture a little stooped, but he still moved through the house with the calm authority of a man who knew where every family secret had been buried. He glanced toward the hallway before lowering his voice. "Mr. Harmon is expected back before the luncheon." Rosa's breath caught. "Today." He changed his flight. She looked down at the crystal glass in her hand. The blue tin box felt heavier in her bag than it had that morning. "I don't need to see him," she said. Mr. Alden studied her face. "No," he said, "but perhaps you do." Rosa set the glass down carefully. She had not spoken Ethan's name aloud in years unless Lily asked a question she could not avoid. She had trained herself not to search for his face in magazines, not to pause when headlines appeared on television screens in waiting rooms, not to imagine him opening the letters that never reached him. But now he was coming back to the house where she cleaned silver, the house where Natalie had decided Lily was a problem, the house where she might be thrown out before she could pay the rent. At 11 o'clock, the first guests began arriving. They came in cashmere coats and polished shoes, carrying umbrellas that vanished into the hands of attendants. Their voices floated through the halls with practiced warmth. Such a beautiful home. Ethan must be thrilled. Natalie has impeccable taste. Rosa passed them with trays of sparkling water, invisible, except when someone needed something. Near the drawing room, she heard one woman whisper to another, "I heard she practically runs the foundation now." The other woman smiled. "She'll be Mrs. Harmon before spring." Natalie stood near the fireplace, receiving compliments beneath a portrait of Ethan's late mother, Eleanor Harmon. The painting showed Eleanor in a navy coat with a gold-buttoned cuff, her grey-green eyes calm and direct. Rosa saw it only for a moment as she passed. Then Lily's voice called from the corridor. Mama Rosa turned sharply. Her daughter had slipped out of the pantry with her colouring book pressed to her chest. Mrs. Bell was behind her, apologetic and flustered. "I only turned to check the oven," she whispered. Lily ran toward Rosa, but before Rosa could reach her, the child stopped at the bottom of the grand staircase. Her eyes had caught something on the floor, a bright circle of gold near Natalie's shoe. Lily bent down and picked it up. Across the room, Natalie turned. Her smile vanished. Rosa saw it happen. The shift in her face. The cold calculation. The anger of a woman who believed every room belonged to her, and who had just noticed one small child holding something she could not control. Rosa started forward, but Natalie was already moving. And upstairs, somewhere beyond the closed doors of the family wing, a car had just pulled into the driveway. Ethan Harmon was home. Natalie did not raise her voice at first. That was what made the moment worse. She crossed the drawing room in measured steps, smiling politely at the guests who had begun to notice Lily near the staircase. Her cream-coloured jacket fit perfectly. Her diamonds caught the chandelier light. From a distance, she looked composed. Up close, Rosa could see the tightness around her mouth. "Sweetheart," Natalie said to Lily, crouching just enough to appear gentle. "Where did you get that?" Lily held up the gold button. It fell down. Natalie reached for it. Lily hesitated. Not because she wanted to keep it. Because children could feel when an adult's smile was not safe. Rosa saw that hesitation. So did Mr. Alden, standing near the doorway with a tray of champagne flutes. His eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Natalie's fingers closed around the button anyway. "There," she said, standing again. "That doesn't belong to you." Lily looked at her empty hand. "I was giving it back." A few guests shifted awkwardly. Natalie glanced around the room, suddenly aware of the audience. Then she smiled wider, as though the child had made an adorable mistake. "Of course you were. But children should not wander around other people's homes touching things they do not understand." Rosa stepped forward. "She was looking for me." Natalie looked at her. The smile disappeared. "And you were supposed to be working." The words were quiet, but everyone heard them. Rosa kept her shoulders straight. She could feel Lily pressing against her leg. She could feel the folded eviction notice in her apron pocket. She could feel the entire room deciding whether she was worth defending. "I was working," Rosa said. "Mrs. Bell was watching her for a few minutes. Nobody asked me. Mr. Alden approved it." Natalie's gaze flicked toward the butler. Mr. Alden did not look away. "I did," he said. Natalie's expression hardened. "That was not your decision to make." For the first time, one of the guests spoke. A woman in a pale blue dress, Mrs. Carraway, from the foundation board, tilted her head. "Natalie, surely it is not necessary to make this into—" "It is necessary," Natalie interrupted, still smiling. "Because staff boundaries matter. This is not a daycare center." The phrase landed like a slap. Lily began to cry. Not loudly. That made it harder. Her face folded inward, and she reached for Rosa with both arms. Rosa lifted her, immediately settling the child against her shoulder. "I apologize for the disruption," Rosa said. Her voice was steady, but inside something was breaking loose. Natalie watched her with a kind of irritation that had nothing to do with the child. "You should," she said. "This house has standards." Rosa looked directly at her. "And my daughter does too." The room went quiet. Natalie's eyes flashed. For 1 second, her careful public mask cracked. Then she leaned close enough that only Rosa could hear. "You should be very careful," she whispered. "Women in your position do not get to make demands." Rosa felt Lily's tears soak into her cardigan. She could have apologized again. She could have lowered her head. She could have taken Lily through the service hall, collected her things, and left before the luncheon began. That was what Natalie expected. Instead, Rosa looked down at the child in her arms. Then she looked back at Natalie. "I am not making a demand," she said quietly. "I am asking you not to speak to my daughter that way." Natalie straightened. Her face went blank. That blankness scared Rosa more than anger would have. "Page," Natalie said. The assistant appeared at once. "Yes, call the agency. Tell them Rosa Morales is no longer needed after today." Rosa's stomach dropped. The room did not move. Even the rain against the windows seemed to pause. Page looked from Natalie to Rosa. "Is vo..." "The luncheon she can finish today if Mrs. Bell needs her, but I do not want her scheduled here again." Lily tightened her arms around Rosa's neck. Rosa could not breathe. Not because she was surprised, because she knew exactly what one cancelled position meant. No Friday pay, no rent, no apartment, no way to explain to Lily why they were packing boxes again. Natalie turned away as if the decision had already become someone else's problem. Then the front doors opened. A gust of cold rain swept through the foyer. Voices shifted. Someone said, "Mr. Harmon." Ethan entered with 2 men from his executive team and a woman Rosa recognized from a magazine interview as his chief legal officer, Mara Keene. He wore a dark overcoat, damp at the shoulders, and he looked tired in the way powerful people often looked when they had spent too many hours being needed by everyone. Natalie moved toward him immediately. "Ethan," she said, relief rushing into her voice. "You're early." He kissed her cheek without warmth. Traffic was lighter than expected. Then his gaze moved across the room. He saw the flowers, the guests, the staff standing too still. Finally, he saw Rosa holding Lily. For a moment, he did not react. Rosa wished he had not seen her at all. She wanted to disappear before the past had a chance to step into the room. She wanted to take Lily home, close the apartment door, and pretend the name Harmon had never entered her life again. But then Lily looked up. Her grey-green eyes met Ethan's, and Ethan stopped walking. Natalie noticed. "Everything is fine," she said quickly. "There was just a small issue with the maid's child." The word maid came out too sharply. Rosa felt Ethan's attention shift to her face. Recognition did not arrive all at once. It moved through him slowly, like a door opening in a dark house. "Rosa," he said. Her name sounded unfamiliar in his mouth after 4 years. Rosa swallowed. "Hello, Ethan." Natalie turned toward them. The room seemed to narrow. "You know her?" she asked. Ethan did not answer right away. His eyes were still on Rosa, then on Lily, then on the blue fabric of Rosa's shoulder bag, where the corner of the old tin box had slipped through the opening. A small flash of faded blue. Nothing anyone else would notice. But Ethan did. His face changed. Not enough for the guest to understand. enough for Natalie to become very still. Rosa saw him looking at the bag. She knew what was inside it. The photograph, the old notes, the proof she had carried for years and told herself she would never use. Her first instinct was to pull the bag close and leave, but Natalie's words came back to her. Women in your position do not get to make demands. Rosa looked at Lily, then at Ethan, and something inside her settled. Not anger, decision. She lowered Lily gently to the floor and knelt in front of her. "Stay with Mr. Alden for a moment," she whispered. Lily wiped her cheeks with both hands. "Are we leaving?" Rosa touched her face. "Not yet." Mr. Alden stepped forward and took Lily's hand. Rosa stood. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the blue tin box. It was dented at one corner. Cheap. Old. The paint had worn away where her thumb had rubbed it over the years. Natalie looked at it with open contempt. "What is that?" Rosa did not answer. Instead, she walked past the guests, past the white roses, past the staircase where the gold button had fallen. She placed the tin box on the long mahogany console table beneath Eleanor Harmon's portrait. The sound it made against the polished wood was soft, but everyone heard it. Ethan stared at it. Rosa rested one hand on the lid. "I did not come here to disrupt your life," she said. Her voice trembled only once. "I came here to work." Natalie crossed her arms. "Then perhaps you should remember your place." Rosa turned toward her. For the first time all morning, she did not look afraid. "I know exactly where I stand," she said. Then she looked at Ethan. "But there are things you deserve to know before anyone decides where my daughter belongs." Outside, thunder rolled over Greenwich. And in the silence that followed, Natalie Voss understood that Rosa was no longer trying to survive the day. She was preparing to stay. Natalie stared at the blue tin box, as if it had appeared on the console table by itself. For a moment, no one spoke. The guests had stopped pretending not to listen. Champagne flutes hovered halfway to mouths. Mrs. Carroway stood near the fireplace with her hand pressed lightly against her collarbone. Paige had gone pale beside the flower display. Even the rain outside seemed quieter now. Ethan moved toward the table. Rosa saw the change in him with every step. The exhaustion from his flight was gone. The polite distance he had worn since entering the foyer was gone too. In its place was something worse. Recognition trying to become memory. Natalie got there first. She placed her hand over the tin box. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Rosa is upset because she was corrected about bringing a child into a private event. We do not need to encourage some dramatic misunderstanding." Rosa looked at Natalie's hand on the lid. Then she looked at Lily. The little girl stood beside Mr. Alden near the service hall, holding his fingers with one hand and her one-eared rabbit with the other. Her cheeks were still wet. She watched her mother with the solemn terror of a child who knew adults were angry, but did not know why. Rosa had spent 3 years protecting Lily from scenes like this, from landlords who knocked too loudly, from school forms with a blank line where a father's name should have gone, from the whispered questions of neighbors, from her own loneliness. And now Natalie had made her daughter feel like a stain on a marble floor. Rosa's voice was low. "Please move your hand." Natalie did not. "You are standing in Ethan's home," she said, "at his engagement luncheon. You have already crossed every boundary of professional behavior. I asked you to move your hand." Natalie's smile tightened. "What exactly do you think is in this box?" Ethan stepped closer. Let her speak. Natalie turned to him. Her expression changed at once, softening with practiced disbelief. Ethan, I am trying to protect you. She is a member of the staff. She has brought a child into the house, disrupted an event, and now she is placing some old box in front of your guests, as though what he asked. The question was quiet, but it cut through her. Natalie swallowed, as though she has some claim on you. Rosa felt every face in the room turn toward her. That was the trap. Natalie had said it without saying it. A poor woman, a wealthy man, a child, an old box. The story would be simple for anyone who wanted it to be simple. Rosa knew that story. She had heard versions of it in strangers' eyes before they ever spoke. She knew how quickly a woman like her could become desperate, manipulative, calculating. It would take only one raised voice, one accusation, one mistake, and Natalie would make sure Rosa became the villain in her own life. I do not have a claim on anyone, Rosa said. Her hands were shaking now, but she placed them flat against the mahogany console until they steadied. I had a chance to ask Ethan for help 4 years ago. I tried. More than once. Natalie's brows drew together. Ethan looked at her sharply. What do you mean, you tried? Rosa could not answer immediately. The memory rose too fast. A narrow apartment in Cambridge. Rain rattling against a broken window. A phone clenched in both hands. The sound of a receptionist saying Mr. Harmon is unavailable. The polite, final voice of Grant Mercer saying Ethan is dealing with a family emergency. Please do not call again. Then the hospital room. The newborn cry. The empty chair near the bed. Rosa looked down at the blue tin box. I called your office, she said. I left messages. I sent a letter. Ethan's face went still. I never received a letter. I know. Natalie gave a short laugh. You know, Rosa looked at her, because no one ever answered. You expect us to believe that Ethan Harmon, with an entire company and a legal department, personally hid from you because you left a few messages? No, Rosa said. I expect nothing from you. The calmness of that answer made Natalie's smile slip. Ethan moved closer to the table. What letter? Rosa. Natalie caught his arm. Ethan, stop. This is exactly why you should not entertain it. She is upset. She lost control of her child in front of guests. Now she is creating a story because she thinks you will feel sorry for her. Rosa's breath caught, not because Natalie had called her a liar, because Lily heard it. The child looked from Natalie to Rosa. Mama didn't make a story, Lily said. Her small voice carried through the foyer. Nobody moved. Lily pulled away from Mr. Alden and walked toward the console table. She was trembling, but she kept walking until she stood beside her mother. Rosa reached for her immediately. Lily lifted her face. Mama writes stories in the blue box, she said. When she cries. The guest looked down. Natalie's lips parted. Ethan's eyes closed for a brief second. Rosa knelt beside Lily, her hand cupping the child's cheek. They are not stories, she whispered. They are letters. Lily's eyes filled again. Why didn't he write back? The question did not sound accusing. That was what made it unbearable. It was only a child asking why someone had not answered. Ethan looked as though the air had left his body. Natalie stepped back from him, No, she said quickly. No, this is inappropriate. Rosa, you are using your child to corner him. Rosa rose slowly. I have spent 3 years doing the opposite. Natalie's face hardened. You expect us to believe that this little girl is— Stop. Ethan's voice was not loud. It did not need to be. Natalie turned toward him. He was looking at Lily, not with suspicion, with a kind of quiet devastation. The portrait of Eleanor Harmon hung above them, its painted eyes fixed on the foyer. The old navy coat, the brass buttons, the grey-green gaze. Ethan looked from the portrait to Lily, then back again. Natalie saw it too. For the first time, fear entered her face without disguise. She stepped in front of Ethan as if she could block the sightline. This proves nothing, she said. Children resemble people all the time. Eye color is not evidence. An old photograph is not evidence. A maid showing up with a child is not evidence. Rosa's expression changed at that word. Maid. Not Rosa. Not Lily's mother. Just Maid. Natalie took a breath and turned toward the guests reclaiming the room with the confidence of a woman who had spent years making people follow her lead. I am sorry you have been put through this, she said, but some people mistake kindness for an invitation. Mr. Harmon has a generous heart. That generosity has unfortunately been taken advantage of before. Mrs. Carroway frowned. Mr. Alden's jaw tightened. Paige looked as though she wanted to speak, but could not. Natalie continued. Rosa, you will gather your belongings. I will make sure the agency knows this was a serious breach of conduct. And since you seem intent on making accusations against Ethan, I will have security escort you from the property. Rosa's body went cold. There it was. The practical threat. Not just her job. Her record with the agency. Her future employment. Her rent. Her home. Natalie had not merely decided to fire her. She had decided to make her unemployable. Lily clutched Rosa's skirt. Are they making us leave? Rosa looked down at her daughter. Every instinct told her to protect the child by leaving before the humiliation grew larger. Take the box. Take Lily. Go back to the apartment and face the rent notice alone. That was the safest thing. That was what she had always done. But then she remembered the last message she had ever left at Ethan's office. Her voice shaking. Her hand pressed against the small curve of her stomach. Please, I'm not asking you for money. I just need you to know. She had begged once. She would not beg again. Rosa opened the blue tin box. Natalie lunged forward. What are you doing? But Rosa had already lifted the lid. Inside lay a bundle of letters tied with faded blue ribbon. Beneath them was the old photograph from the pier, its edges softened by years of being handled. And under the photograph was a small hospital bracelet with Lily's full name printed in black ink. Ethan's breath caught when he saw the photo. The navy coat, the gold buttons. His younger face beside Rosa's. Natalie reached for it. Rosa closed her fingers over the photograph first. You threw away a gold button, she said softly. You thought it was nothing. Natalie's face went white. Rosa held the photograph against her chest, but it belonged to a coat Ethan wore the night he promised me he would never disappear without saying goodbye. The room fell into a silence so complete that Lily's uneven breathing could be heard. Ethan stared at the photograph, then at Rosa, then at the letters. His voice came out rough. Grant. Rosa looked at him. Your assistant, she said. Grant Mercer. Ethan's eyes sharpened. Natalie said nothing. That was the first undeniable sign. Not guilt, not yet, but knowledge. A flicker in her eyes, a fraction too late. Ethan saw it. So did Rosa. And before anyone could speak again, the front door opened behind them. A gust of rain entered the foyer. Then a man's voice said from the threshold, "Mr. Harmon, I came as soon as I got your message." Everyone turned. A grey-haired attorney stood beneath the iron awning, rain darkening his shoulders. In one hand he carried a leather case. In the other, a sealed envelope marked with a name Rosa had not heard in 4 years. Grant Mercer. The attorney stepped inside and closed the front door behind him. Rainwater glistened on the shoulders of his charcoal coat. He looked older than Rosa remembered, his hair nearly white now, but his eyes were still precise and serious. "Mr. Harmon," he said, "I'm Daniel Price. I represented Grant Mercer during his resignation proceedings." Ethan did not take his eyes off the sealed envelope. "You said on the phone that you found something." "I did." Daniel Price looked around the foyer, at Natalie, at Rosa, at the guests holding their breath, then at Lily standing close against her mother's side. "This may not be the appropriate setting. It is now," Ethan said. Natalie stepped forward. "Ethan, this is absurd. You are allowing a former employee and a stranger to ambush you at our engagement luncheon." Daniel's expression did not change. "I am not here on behalf of Miss Morales." Natalie stopped. "I am here because Grant Mercer died 6 weeks ago." The room stiffened. Ethan's jaw tightened. Grant Mercer had been his executive assistant for nearly 9 years. He had handled Ethan's calls, his travel, his private correspondence, and the endless machinery of a company that had grown too large for one man to touch every part of it. 4 years earlier, when Ethan's mother had been dying and the company had been fighting a brutal takeover attempt, Grant had been the man standing between Ethan and the world, the man Ethan trusted. Daniel held up the envelope. "Before he died, Mr. Mercer instructed me to deliver this only if I could confirm that Ms. Rosa Morales had come back into Mr. Harmon's life." Rosa's fingers tightened around the photograph. Natalie's voice came out thin. "That is impossible." Daniel turned toward her. "No, Ms. Voss. It is not." Ethan took the envelope from him. For a second, he only stared at Grant's handwriting across the front. "Ethan, if Rosa ever returns, give her the choice I took from her." The room seemed to sway. Rosa did not move. She had imagined this moment too many times. Some version of it. A phone ringing. A letter arriving. Someone explaining why Ethan had never come. But no explanation could give her back the nights she spent awake beside Lily's crib. No explanation could return the years when she had watched her daughter take her first steps without a father there to see them. Ethan broke the seal. Inside was a single folded letter and an old black phone. Natalie's face lost its color. Ethan noticed. "What is this?" he asked. Daniel answered quietly. "Grant kept a private archive of calls he deleted from your office system. He also kept written notes about why he deleted them." Ethan looked at the phone, then at Daniel. Why Daniel hesitated? Because he became convinced that someone close to you wanted Ms. Morales kept away. Natalie laughed once. It sounded wrong. Convenient. No one agreed with her. She looked around the foyer and saw it happen. The first shift. Mrs. Carraway's hand lowering from her throat. Paige taking one small step away from Natalie. Mr. Alden standing straighter. The guests no longer looking at Rosa with suspicion. They were looking at Natalie. Ethan unfolded the letter. His hands were steady, but his face was not. He read the first line silently. Then he stopped. "What does it say?" Natalie asked. Ethan looked up. His eyes were darker now. "It says Grant intercepted 17 messages from Rosa." Rosa closed her eyes. 17. She had not known it was that many. She remembered some of them. The first left at 11:48 at night, when she had stared at the phone for 20 minutes before pressing call. The fourth after the doctor confirmed the pregnancy. The ninth after Ethan's mother's obituary appeared in the paper, and Rosa had convinced herself grief was the reason he had not answered. The final one left from a hospital bed the day Lily was born. Ethan looked back down at the letter. He wrote that he was instructed to remove them from my call list. Natalie's mouth opened, then closed. Daniel Price placed a small recorder on the console table. "There is one voicemail on the device," he said. Mr. Mercer preserved it separately. He described it as the message that made him understand what he had done. Natalie moved toward the recorder. "You cannot play that here." Rosa looked at her. "You were willing to call security on me here." Natalie turned. For the first time, Rosa saw no confidence in her face. Only calculation. Only fear. Ethan reached for the recorder. Rosa put her hand over his. He looked at her. Every eye in the room followed the movement. Rosa swallowed. 4 years ago, she had been a frightened woman asking for a man to hear her. Today, she was not asking. "I will play it," she said. Ethan's hand slowly moved away. Rosa pressed the button. At first, there was only static. Then a younger version of her own voice filled the marble foyer. Soft, breathless, trying not to cry. "Ethan, I know you may not want to hear from me. I know you have a lot happening, but I need you to know I'm pregnant." Natalie's shoulders went rigid. The recording continued. "I'm not calling because I want anything from you. I don't. I don't want you to find out someday and think I tried to keep your child from you." Rosa's eyes filled, but she did not look away. The whole room listened. Even Lily. "I loved you," the voice on the recording said, "and maybe that was foolish. But I believed you when you said you would never disappear without saying goodbye." The recorder clicked softly. Then silence. No one moved. Not the guests. Not Mr. Alden. Not Paige. Not Ethan. The legal documents Daniel Price carried mattered. The dates mattered. The phone logs mattered. But none of them hit the room the way that voice did. A woman, 4 years younger, alone. Not demanding money. Not threatening a scandal. Only asking to be heard. Ethan stared at Rosa, as if he had been handed the full weight of every year he had missed. "I didn't know," he said. His voice broke on the last word. Natalie stepped forward quickly. Ethan Grant was unstable near the end. You cannot build a life-changing accusation around one dead man's letter and a voicemail that could have been manipulated. Daniel Price opened his leather case. I anticipated that concern. He removed 2 items. The first was a printed call log from Ethan Harmon's private office line. The second was an email chain. Grant's archive was independently verified before I contacted Mr. Harmon, Daniel said. The deleted messages match Miss Morales' phone number. The timestamps align with the dates in her letters, and this email was sent from Grant Mercer to Ms. Voss. Natalie stared at the page. She did not touch it. Daniel continued. The email asks whether he should keep filtering Ms. Morales' calls. The reply is one sentence. Ethan's eyes shifted toward Natalie. What did you say? Natalie whispered, I don't remember. Daniel read the sentence aloud. Make sure she understands he has moved on. The words hung in the air. Simple, clean, impossible to explain away. Natalie's breath hitched. That is not what it sounds like. Paige made a small sound behind her. Everyone turned. The young assistant had tears in her eyes. I saw something, she said. Natalie's face changed. Paige. But Paige was no longer looking at her. She was looking at Ethan. About 6 months ago, Paige said I was organizing old foundation files. There was a box marked Mercer Private. Natalie came in and told me not to open it. She said it was personal and none of my business. Natalie's voice sharpened. You were my assistant. I was, Paige said quietly. The second shift became visible. The room understood before Natalie did. This was not a misunderstanding. It was not a jealous fiancé speaking badly in the moment. It was a decision. A deliberate silence built around another woman's life. Natalie turned to Ethan, desperation replacing elegance. I did it because I loved you. Ethan's face did not soften. You loved access to me. That is not fair. You knew there was a child. I knew there was a woman who wanted something from you. Rosa's voice entered the silence. I wanted you to know your daughter existed. Natalie turned toward her. Her eyes flashed with the last cruel instinct she had left. And now you think you can walk in here and take everything. Rosa looked down at Lily. Then she looked back at Natalie. No. Her voice was calm. I came here to keep you from taking one more thing from us. Nobody spoke. Natalie's shoulders sagged as though that sentence had struck her harder than shouting ever could. Ethan walked to the console table and picked up the gold button. The little lion crest rested in his palm. He looked at Rosa. Then he knelt in front of Lily. The child watched him cautiously. Ethan held out the button. You found this, he said. Lily nodded. I wanted to give it back. I know. His throat moved. And you were right to. Lily looked at the button, then at the portrait of Eleanor Harmon above them. She has my eyes, Lily said. Ethan looked up at the painting. For one long second he could not speak. Then he looked back at Lily. Yes, he whispered. She does. Natalie turned away. She seemed suddenly smaller than the room she had tried to rule. Ethan stood. His face was pale, but his voice had settled into something final. The engagement is over. Natalie stared at him. Ethan, it was over the moment you decided you had the right to erase a child from my life. She shook her head. You cannot humiliate me like this. Ethan looked around the foyer, at the guests, at the foundation board members, at the staff who had watched Natalie use kindness as a weapon. You humiliated yourself. Mrs. Carraway stepped forward. Her expression was not angry. It was colder than anger. The Foundation's executive committee will meet this afternoon, she said. Natalie, you will be removed from all gala and fundraising responsibilities pending a full review. Natalie turned toward her. You cannot do that. I can, Mrs. Carraway replied. And I will. Ethan looked to Mara Keene, his chief legal officer. Mara, contact security. Ms. Voss is not to access the family office, the foundation accounts, or any private records. Arrange for her belongings to be sent to her apartment. Natalie stood very still. The woman who had ordered Rosa removed from the property was now being told she could not enter it again. Mara nodded once. Already handled. Natalie's lips trembled. She looked at Ethan as if waiting for him to change his mind. He did not. Then she looked at Rosa. But Rosa no longer looked small. She stood beside Lily, with the blue tin box open on the mahogany console, one hand resting on the letters that had finally been heard. Natalie's voice came out barely audible. You planned this. Rosa shook her head. No. She closed the tin box gently. I survived it. Outside, the rain began to ease, and inside the Harmon estate, Natalie Voss walked past the white roses, past the guests who would no longer protect her reputation, and past the staircase where one little gold button had rolled into the truth. She did not look back. Ethan did. He looked at Rosa and Lily. Not as strangers, not as a problem to solve, but as the family he had lost without ever knowing he had lost them. And for the first time in 4 years, Rosa allowed herself to believe that the silence was finally over. For several minutes after Natalie left, nobody knew what to do with their hands. The engagement luncheon had become a room full of untouched food, wilting white roses, and people who had just watched a carefully polished life come apart in public. Mrs. Carraway was the first to speak. She turned to the guests and said, I believe this gathering is over. No one argued. Coats were collected. Umbrellas opened in the foyer. A few people murmured awkward apologies to Ethan, but he barely seemed to hear them. Others tried to offer Rosa sympathetic smiles, the kind people gave when they wanted to be forgiven for standing silent too long. Rosa accepted none of them. Not with anger, not with gratitude. She simply held Lily's hand and watched the room empty. By noon, the Harmon estate was quiet again. The caterers packed away untouched pastries. The florist gathered the arrangements Natalie had rejected twice that morning. Paige sat alone in the kitchen for several minutes before Mrs. Bell brought her tea. Mr. Alden walked Rosa and Lily into the sunroom where the rain had finally stopped and pale light spread across the wooden floor. Lily stood near the window, pressing her fingers to the glass. Is the mean lady gone? She asked. Rosa knelt beside her. Yes. Forever, Rosa looked toward the gardens where water still clung to the hedges and stone statues. For now, she said, and she cannot hurt you here any more. Lily thought about that. Then she looked at the gold button resting in Rosa's palm. Can I hold it? Rosa gave it to her. The child turned it over slowly, studying the little lion stamped into its surface. It's not scary, Lily said. No, Rosa replied. It never was. A soft knock sounded at the open door. Ethan stood there. He had taken off his jacket. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and he looked less like the man from magazine covers than Rosa remembered, tired, uncertain, older around the eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan looked at Lily. Would it be all right if I came in? Rosa could have answered for her. She almost did. But this was the first thing she needed to do differently. She looked at Lily. It's your choice. Lily held the button close to her chest. Then she nodded once. Ethan entered slowly and sat in the chair across from them, not too close. I'm sorry, he said. Rosa's face did not change. I know. The words seemed to surprise him. I don't mean I expect forgiveness, he said quickly. I know I don't deserve that. I just need you to know that I am sorry for every day I did not look harder, every call I did not return, every year she had to wonder why. Rosa looked at him for a long time. You didn't know, she said. No, but I did not know you didn't know. His eyes lowered. I understand. No, Rosa said quietly. You understand the facts now. That is different. Ethan looked back up. Rosa's voice stayed calm, but it carried 4 years inside it. You get to be devastated today. I have been devastated for years. He nodded slowly. Yes. That single word changed something. Not everything. Not even close. But he did not argue. He did not ask her to soften the truth so he could bear it. He let it stand between them. Lily climbed onto Rosa's lap and held the gold button toward Ethan. Did you drop this? Ethan smiled faintly. Not today, but someone I loved wore buttons like that. The lady in the picture, his smile disappeared. You saw the picture, Lily nodded. Rosa reached into the blue tin box and took out the old photograph from the pier. Ethan looked at it for a long time. He touched the edge but did not take it from her. My mother gave me that coat, he said. She wore one just like it when I was little. She always said the lion meant you had to be brave without becoming hard. Lily looked at the button again. Was she nice? Ethan's throat tightened. She was very nice. Lily considered this, then placed the button in his hand. Then you can keep it. Ethan closed his fingers around it. For the first time that day, tears rose in his eyes. 3 days later, Rosa met him at a family law office in Stamford. She did not go alone. Mr. Alden offered to drive her. Mrs. Bell watched Lily in the waiting room with crayons and apple slices. Mara Keene sat beside Ethan with folders neatly arranged on the table. But Rosa did not need anyone to speak for her. The court process would take time. There would be DNA testing, formal acknowledgement, custody arrangements, and a long series of conversations no one could rush. Ethan offered to pay every overdue bill. Rosa refused the first time. Then she accepted help with the rent, only after Mara drew up an agreement that did not give Ethan control over her home, her choices, or Lily's future. I don't need to be rescued, Rosa told him. I know, Ethan said. I need stability. You'll have it. Rosa looked him in the eyes. Not because you feel guilty. No, he said. Because Lily deserves it. And because you do. The DNA results arrived 2 weeks later. No one was surprised. Still, when the report confirmed that Ethan Harmon was Lily's biological father, Rosa sat at her kitchen table and cried silently for nearly an hour. Not because she had won, not because Natalie had lost, because a blank line on a school form would no longer be blank, because Lily would no longer grow up thinking her father had chosen not to know her, because truth, when it finally arrived, could still hurt, but it could also make room for healing. Natalie Voss did not disappear completely. The foundation removed her from its gala committee. The board ended her consulting contract. An internal investigation uncovered several private files she had accessed without authorization, including correspondence connected to Grant Mercer's archive. Within a month, she was gone from Greenwich Society in the way people like Natalie feared most. Not dramatically, not loudly. Doors simply stopped opening. Invitations stopped arriving. People who once praised her taste began speaking of her judgment. She tried to blame Grant, then Rosa, then Ethan. But the voicemail remained. And so did the email. There was nothing glamorous about the truth once it had been heard. By spring, Rosa had moved into a small townhouse near the edge of town. It was not a mansion. It had a narrow porch, an uneven backyard, and a kitchen where the morning sun fell across the table. Lily chose the yellow bedroom. Ethan did not buy the house for them. Rosa bought it herself with a settlement, a new position managing community programs at the Harmon Foundation, and the savings she had fought to protect for years. Her first day at the foundation, she walked through the front entrance, not the service door. Mr. Alden had retired by then, though he still visited every Sunday with butter cookies in a blue tin. Mrs. Bell came for dinner twice a month. Paige had taken a job at a non-profit in New Haven and sent Lily postcards with pictures of birds. And Ethan came every Wednesday evening for spaghetti homework and the slow, awkward work of becoming a father. He never called himself Dad until Lily did first. It happened one quiet night in June. They were sitting on the porch after a thunderstorm, watching water drip from the roof. Lily had fallen asleep against Ethan's side, her one-eared rabbit tucked beneath her chin. In her other hand, she held the gold button, the same button Natalie had kicked beneath the staircase, the same button Rosa had carried through years of silence, the same button Ethan had kept on his desk after Lily gave it back to him. Lily stirred in her sleep. Dad Ethan went very still. "Yes, sweetheart. Don't disappear without saying goodbye." Rosa looked at him. The old promise returned to the porch, changed now by everything it had cost. Ethan pressed his lips to Lily's hair. "Never again," he whispered. And this time Rosa believed he meant it. Because dignity is not given by a mansion, a title, or a powerful name. It begins the moment someone refuses to let another person be erased. What would you have done if you were Rosa, walked away to protect your peace, or stayed to make the truth heard? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories about courage, justice, and the quiet strength that changes everything.